Why do we need to make a swatch? Why? Why? I'm gonna tell you. In video 1, we defined what a swatch is, and we talked about gauge and the fact that a swatch doesn't have to be a 4" by 4" rectangular section. It can really be any shape needed, so that way you can have the multiple stitch count requirement work, so you know that the pattern will work, and you more so need to go off of the pattern and then measure the pattern instead of having the pattern meet measurement. So we went over that, and great information. This video is about the why. Why do we need to make a swatch? What is so important about it that has us like, yes, you really need to do it. And honestly, when it comes to the why and the real need to do it, this is more so connected with clothing. So I brought out my Nubu tank top as an example to kind of make sense of, make a connection of everything I'm talking about. So sometimes the swatch just gives you information that you can take and do with moving forward. Other times the swatch helps us to make sure that we are staying on track with the designer, with the pattern, to make sure that our result, our end result, matches what we want or matches what the pattern tells us it will be. I don't know if you've ever seen this in the pattern, and I will go ahead and I will put some examples on the screen for you. But if you've ever seen a pattern and they have like a swatch where it says, okay, every 10 inches, there's this many stitches, or every 4 inches, there's this many stitches. And every 10 inches, there's this many rows, or every 4 inches, there's this many rows. So they obviously took their work, and they took their gauge tool or their ruler or their measurement, and they did their gauge, and they said, okay, my work, what I created, what I wrote this whole pattern about, my project, every 4 inches I have this many stitches. And with my project that I'm showing you how to make, every 4 inches I have this many rows. Okay, so that's what I did. And that's how I determined what a small, medium, large, extra large, 1x, 2x, 3x, 4x, 5x size is off of my dimensions, my stitches per inch and my rows per inch. Okay, so when they tell you, okay, if you're going to make a small, then you need to make 25 rows of this stitch in order to meet dimension, and you're like, okay, sweet, okay, I'm going to use the crochet hook that you recommended in the pattern. Okay, crochet hook. I'm just going to use an H8 here as my little example. And I see that you're working with a size 4 medium worsted weight yarn, so I'm going to grab that right here. And because that's what you recommended, is using those tools, I don't need to check the swatch. I'm just going to go, and I'm going to make all the chains that you say to make and all of the rows that you say to make. And then you finish their pattern and you look at your project and you're like, wait a second, why is my project smaller than what they say it should be? Or why is my project bigger than what they say it should be? I used the same crochet hook they did. I used the same yarn weight size that they did. Why? What's the difference? I don't understand. They must have done it wrong, because I followed their pattern and it's not what they said it should be. Well, that's not really fair, because everyone has that yarn tension. We keep talking about this, and a lot of people forget this, and that is that my crochet tension, my stitches may be tighter than your stitches, or looser than your stitches. Maybe you crochet tighter than I do. So when I'm working up my pattern, I'm having this many stitches per inch, but you're having a different number of stitches per inch. So that's why the swatch can be super important. That is a why we use swatches. And so they recommend whenever using or making clothes in particular, because we want the clothes to fit, right? That's important. Like blankets, okay, so my blanket is smaller or bigger than the dimensions that you said, but it's a blanket, so it's like, it's all right if it's a little off. But if you're making clothes and you intended on making, say, a large size of something, and your final product ends up being like a medium or an extra large or 2 extra large, and you're like, wait a second, that's not the size I wanted, well, you may need to check your gauge from your swatch. Okay, so what you would do is you would take the pattern that they're using in the project, or maybe you're working it up, but honestly what you should do before you even begin, so you can make sure you have the correct number of chains in your foundation row and before you get super invested in the project. Go about the pattern that's in the middle of the project, or look at their multiple chain count requirement of the pattern. So for me, in the Nubu tank top, I'm working half double crochet stitches. Okay? And I'm working the stitches between stitches. So I don't have a stitch count requirement in mine. It's a 1-to-1 ratio. So maybe you just kind of chain 10 stitches, or chain 10 chains, okay? And then you work up the work up a couple rows of the work, and then take your ruler and put it against the work. So we'll pretend that this is the yarn that I used for the Nubu tank top. Okay, we're pretending right now. And I'm like, okay, so the pattern says for every 2 inches there are, and they have 7, for every 2 inches they have 7 stitches. Okay, well I'm gonna come to my little swatch that I've made using the same pattern that they did, using the same yarn, using the same crochet hook, and I'm gonna measure, and when I look at 2 inches, they have 7 stitches, but I have 6. Or they have 7 stitches, but I have 9. Okay, so that means that you will either have your project be smaller or bigger than what the designer has created. Okay, how you can make adjustments with that. Again, we're working with swatches. We're not making full projects. We're not making full rows. We're not investing ourselves in a 75 chain 6-row piece of work that we are going to make multiples of here. No, we're making just the small little swatch square. Take your crochet hooks, okay? The recommended crochet hook that the pattern designer used, we're using an example here, okay? The H8 5mm crochet hook, okay? Next to it, going down, making a smaller crochet hook, is the G6 or the 4mm, 4.25mm. Or going up a size would be the I9 or 5.25 or 5.5mm crochet hook, okay? If your stitches, if you work up your little swatch and you notice that your stitches, you have less stitches than they do, maybe you're working your stitch tension tighter, looser in that regard, looser than they did, and that's fine. That's totally fine. If they said every 2 inches they had 7 stitches, and you worked up your project and every 2 inches you have 6 stitches, that's less than the pattern, then your stitches are bigger than their stitches. You can fix that by going to a smaller crochet hook. Your stitches are bigger, to balance, use a smaller crochet hook. If the pattern designer, every 2 inches they have 7 stitches, and you work up your work and every 2 inches you have 9, 10 stitches, you have more stitches per 2 inches than they do, then your stitches are probably a lot tighter than the pattern designers. So to make your stitches looser, go up a crochet hook size. Keep the same yarn, all that, keep the same stitches, same chains, but go up a crochet hook size, and that should help make your stitches a little bit bigger, so that way you can even out that scale, and your goal is to try to get the same number of stitches per 2 inches as the designer for the pattern, as their swatch, their gauge, okay? So it's okay to work with different crochet hooks. It's okay if your stitches are too tight, too loose, to make adjustments. And then again, work up small little swatch, remeasure, work up small little swatch, remeasure, until you have the same gauge that they do. Whereas every 2 inches, 7 stitches, when you get every 2 inches, you have 7 stitches, You know you're good to go. You have the crochet hook that you need, you have the yarn that you need, and now you can move forward in the project, and you can feel safe and comfortable that if you want to make a large, you're getting a large and no other size. So that is a big major why when it comes to why gauges and swatches are so important. It's to make sure that the pattern that you're following, the end result, is as close as possible to your end result. That way you can make sure you get what you want. Okay, so that's a big why. And honestly, when it comes to other things such as, I think I mentioned this in the first video as well, something I'm working on personally with just general projects, blankets in particular. I know for me, I have a hard time slowing down, making that step of, let me try a little gauge of this first before I dive in. I like to dive in. I do. I get excited. I want to crochet. I want to make the project. I get it. I'm there with you. But I've had this happen way too many times where I find a yarn and I'm like, ooh, I want to make a blanket with you. Oh, you're beautiful. I just want to dive in. And I grab the crochet hook that I know will work with the size yarn, and I find a pattern and I'm like, oh, that'll be great. I want to use that pattern with this yarn. It's going to be beautiful. So I make this giant foundation row chain. I work up 6 rows and I'm like, that doesn't go together at all. That does not look good. That does not look good. And then I'm like, dang it, now I'm out all that time, all that energy, and sometimes the yarn doesn't want to come apart. It doesn't want to frog. The project doesn't want to come undone because maybe the yarn just, it's not friendly to undo. And sometimes I have to cut the yarn and throw it away. That's a waste of materials. And it's so sad, especially if you were in love with this yarn. Maybe it was expensive, or maybe it's just materials and now you have less of that to play with. And it's just a major, major bummer. But if I was or were to make just a small little swatch with that yarn I love, with the crochet hook, with that pattern, and see immediately with this little swatch if I liked it, wanted to move forward, or oh, I see right now that doesn't go together at all. That's not going to look good. Then I can scrap the swatch and not waste all that time, not waste all of that yarn and all that money. So that is something I'm working on that I need to do a better job of, is just taking that extra, 3-4 minutes to work up a small little square. Or if the pattern I want to work is like a chevron where it's 16 chains plus 2, work up a couple multiple stitch counts and then work that up just like a small section, see if I like it, and then I can move forward. And so, yeah, there are some major things. It makes me so sad when people will tell me I was working up this project, I didn't like it at all, but the yarn didn't frog and I had to throw it away. That's so sad. So those are some major whys. I'm sure there's more. If you have more reasons why swatches are important, I would love for you to put those in the comment section below, because I would like to learn them. I would like to gain knowledge from you as well. And that could also help other brand new crocheters who are still wondering, why do I need to do this step? Or even some more seasoned crocheters like myself who has crocheted for, what was that, 18 years, 18 plus, no, more than that, like over 20 years, and then finally start swatching. Sometimes it takes a second for you to figure it out. But yes, so if you have any other reasons why swatches are important, please put those in the comment section below underneath the why video. And I want to just thank you so much for continuing on with video number 2. Video number 3, we're going to dive a little bit more into the other information that is super vital and super cool about swatches. So I will see you very soon with the next video. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you with the next one, guys. Bye.